I am Audrey Johnson, and this is On the Couch with Audrey J. Cassandra O'Neal is an extraordinary musician. She shares with us events that shaped her career, the challenges of being a woman in the music business, and how Prince changed her life. Speaking with her was like talking to an old friend. So grab that beverage and join us on the couch. Welcome back to another episode of On the Couch with Audrey J. Today I have the distinct honor and pleasure of welcoming Miss Cassandra O'Neal to the couch. Hello.
Hey, good afternoon. Happy New Year. Merry Christmas.
Happy Kwanzaa.
Right. Happy Juneteenth. All that.
All that good stuff. It is wonderful to have you here today. Thank you for joining me. The Prince community, I don't think know a lot about you. We just kind of saw you. It's like, bam. It's like 1 minute she was here and it's like, whoa, who is that?
Oh, that's funny.
And then it's like, okay, now we need to go down the rabbit hole and find out more about her.
Right.
So what's your story?
Okay. When I'm asked that question, I just kind of begin with three things. I'm just a woman who loves God, loves music, and loves to play. And that's pretty much has been my story since I've been playing music professionally. If you want the backstory, though, from the beginning, as I like to say, both my parents were musicians and singers.
Okay.
On both sides of my family, I have singers and musicians, and so. When it came to my
genes.
So when it came to my sisters and I was the youngest of actually I'm the youngest of everybody, but my parents had 3 kids and adopted 3 kids. So there was 6 of us all together. By the time I was like maybe 5. And so all of us, especially my blood sisters, we used to harmonize even when I can say that I was probably singing before I was talking. And my mother, her water broke playing a service for my father. And, it just kind of happened from there. The church has been definitely the centerpiece of my training. And my mother, she was the pianist. My father was the singer. And my mother played traditional gospel music. Mm-hmm. And so she taught me everything she could. Everything she played, I could play. I was playing by ear, since I was, able to talk. And so, my mother would play and I would sneak, after she would finish and she's done practicing, I would sneak up there, crawl up there and play what she played. And then my sisters were taking piano lessons, both of them, my 2 older sisters. And I would like sit underneath a chair or something. I would be hiding, listening. And they would get, perturbed with a part that they were struggling with and kind of give up and walk away. And then
the little sister would come up and play it.
Right. Exactly. And my mother would be in the kitchen and be like, Suzanne, Tammy, what you just struggling with that? And they're like, standing behind her, like, that ain't me. That's Casey. That ain't us. So they realized early on that there was a gift there.
You had a gift.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And my mother had a choir. And oftentimes we would go sing places and we didn't have a musician. So we would sing a popular song that most musicians would know. Mm-hmm. And my mother would call me over and she'd be like, all right, sing the song in the right key. And it was kind of like a circus trick actually, because nobody really knew what it was called that I had. And so I would start singing the song, sometimes you're better, seem to get you down. And the musician is looking at me like, how she know? I'm this little girl with pigtails
This
and
little girl knows
glasses.
what's going on.
Yeah, with pigtails and glasses. Like, how? And it was just, again, it was like a circus trick that we just kind of would do when needed. And I found out later on when I started taking piano lessons at age 8 that was called perfect pitch, is when you can identify the pitch of a song or from out of midair without having played anything. Now the other side of it is called relative pitch, where someone can give you a note and you can find the rest of the notes in the scale, but I didn't have that. I had what
you had perfect.
Exactly. And and it really, once I figured out what it was, it helped me hear differently. It didn't necessarily help me play better, but I would hear very keenly and very precise. And so that helped my recall as time went along. And I studied classical from age 8 to age 12 when we moved away from New York. And then I just continued to just play, always continued to go to church. And, I had a little tape recorder that I would take everywhere with me. I always made sure I had fresh batteries and a cassette. I would be taping over stuff. I mean, it just moments. I still have these cassettes somewhere over here and in a box somewhere. And I would just continue to record stuff, and then I would go home and listen to it and just listen to it over and over and over and over and over. And in there, in about 1984, 85, and I knew who Prince was because I had older sisters that listened to his music.
Okay.
Yeah, and so in my house, you could find like 5 different radios going on at one time. You had remember the stereo that would sit on the floor.
Oh yeah.
That had the turntable and the 8-track in there and the cassette in there. So that would be going on because my mother would be cleaning. She was a housewife, and before she became a nurse. And then my sisters, they each had their own rooms, and I had my room, and I had so everybody had a different radio. So my sisters, because they were, 6, 7 years older than me, my oldest sister is actually, she is 11 years older than me. So they would be listening to, like, say, we're talking about late 70s, they would be listening to Parliament Funkadelic.
Yeah.
And my mother would be listening to her Shirley Caesar and James Cleveland. My father would be listening to his Dinah Washington and Frank Sinatra.
Okay.
And my other sisters, they probably were listening to probably the same stuff that my older sisters were listening to, which was the R&B of the day. And me, I was listening to the pop music of the day.
Okay.
I didn't listen to R&B like that.
All genres represented pretty much in your household.
Right. And but me, myself, my drug of choice was pop music. The MTV era was my era. I was there when MTV played its first video, and I watched MTV all day, every day. I was fascinated with it. I loved the rock music. I loved because it was different again than what was in my environment. So I created my own environment. Right. And that was, Judas Priest and Twisted Sister and Quiet Riot and Led Zeppelin and all those people. And I loved it. And
what did your sisters think about your choices of music?
Well, they thought it was interesting because they used to laugh at it because it was, again, they didn't listen to that stuff. Now, they knew about it. You know what I'm saying? It was one of those things where, the popular pop songs, they knew because we lived in a neighborhood where we were, as far as the African-American kids, we were really the minority. We went to pretty much all Caucasian, or can we say white? All white schools. And so, all the come on, that's how I was able to assimilate.
Right.
with my
Right.
classmates
Your
because
classmates, yeah,
because
because you were kind of listening to the same things they
right,
were
right,
listening
right.
to.
So we would
Yeah.
be, at the lunch table singing, you better run, you better hide, and they're like, I mean, it never ceased to happen where they're looking at me like, how you know?
How do you know that?
Right. Like, how you, huh? But that's how I made friends. And so,
Hmm.
and my parents, they welcomed it. Now, when Prince came along, though, my first song I have to say that I heard by him was "I Want to Be Your Lover," and I was infatuated with it because I was just like, first of all, it's in a weird key. It's in B. Not very many songs are in B, and I didn't realize that he was a guitar player. And
Hmm.
E, G, B, and D, those are guitar keys. So, and then he's singing up high, and
Right.
these you got these harmonies, and
Like,
these
who is this?
yeah, you got these harmonies, and you got these synth sounds. It was different, and so whenever it came on, I would always listen to it. And then Soft and Wet was out, and who knew what
Mhm.
Soft and Wet meant then? I didn't.
We didn't really know what we were
We
singing.
didn't.
We
We
just knew
didn't.
we liked the
We just
song.
liked it. We just liked it. And so, yeah, Soft and Wet was probably the second one. Trying to think. Dirty. I don't remember songs off of Dirty Mind, but I
Really?
remember Controversy.
Okay.
Yeah,
That's interesting because the Dirty Mind, I would have thought that would have appealed to you with your musical taste of the time, more rock
but
ish.
they didn't play it. That's what. Remember? Okay, so remember, I was watching MTV. The only
Hmm.
video they played on MTV of his was 1999 and Controversy.
Right.
That was it up until Purple Rain came along and
Hmm.
Little Red Corvette. So, you know, Dirty Mind didn't have a, actually Dirty Mind did have a video, but it wasn't rockish
Right.
enough
Okay.
for them to play it. So, and that,
They weren't ready for that yet
no, they
anyway.
weren't. They weren't. And so, I realized probably about 84, 85 that MTV didn't play any black artists unless it had a guitar solo in it, some type of rock guitar solo. And I figured that out myself. Like, I never talked to anybody about it.
Hmm.
Um, but it was just a notion that I came upon because they were showing Dead Giveaway by Shalimar, which had a distortion guitar solo in it. They didn't show no other Shalimar videos. They didn't show no Night to Remember. They didn't show no
They weren't for sure.
yeah, none of them. The second time around, they didn't show none of that. There was a group, I can't remember where they were from, but they had a song called Eat Your Heart Out. And they were like this black rock group. They wanted to be Prince. They were funny. When you look back at it now,
I'll have to look that up because
yeah,
I
when
don't
you look
recall
when you
that.
see it, you'll be like, oh, oh, okay.
Oh, oh.
Right. Y'all trying to I know what y'all trying to do. And it was it
Bless your heart.
yeah, yeah. And the music wasn't bad, but the presentation was funny.
Yeah, yeah.
But we didn't know back then because we weren't supposed to be singing that type of music anyway. So the fact
Right.
that somebody even did it was kind of monumental at the time. Um, and so Prince was, again, I was a fan, but it didn't really hit me his artistry until Purple Rain came along.
Okay.
And I went to go see Purple Rain with my sisters, and
Hmm.
I was hooked.
Blown away.
I was blown
Yeah.
away. And it wasn't even the soundtrack songs that did it for me. It was the other stuff. It was the song that they played when Apollonia was purifying herself in the waters of Lake Minnetonka. It was the score stuff that he
Hmm.
composed
Hmm.
that
Hmm.
weren't songs, the version of God that was being played during
Yeah.
the love scene,
Hmm.
um, the father song that he played on piano.
Yeah.
That was what got
those
me.
were the things that got you.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. And so I was hooked from there. So every TV show, award show, MTV special, I saw it. I saw it.
Did not miss it.
No. And then I would
Prince. Oh,
go ahead.
I'm watching.
Go ahead. Yeah, exactly.
No, it's like, no, you were saying to yourself, like, Prince, yeah, I'm watching that.
Yeah, I'm watching that. And they would let me get up and if I was sleeping. And I remember he was on the Grammys and he did Purple Rain. He had on like a green and blue outfit, like green and purple type suit or something. And they put him on last. So I was already in the bed. And my parents let me get up and watch it. And they like, she likes him. So
that is so awesome, because usually I hear stories about parents that are like, you are not going to listen, to that music. You're not going to see that man, But your parents were kind of more welcoming because of they, I guess, appreciated that musicality,
right,
and kind of look past the other stuff,
right. And so now there was a time. So I started buying Prince records. I started buying the albums and the cassettes, and I still have the cassettes. I don't have the albums, like an idiot. When my parents moved, they chucked all that stuff. Somebody has it, I'm sure. But I just ended up buying stuff on cassette because it was just easier to listen to at the time. And so I went backwards. I bought 1999. By then Around the World in a Day was out. So I bought that. And then I bought, Controversy, Dirty Mind, Prince on the horse, and then Prince for You. And I just started listening to it all the time. In between it, I would go home, and that would be, after I finished my homework, that would be the first thing I did. When I was put on punishment, I wasn't allowed to watch MTV, and I wasn't allowed to listen to music. That was my punishment. I could do everything else. I could go outside, but I didn't like going outside. I loved listening to music. So, that was my punishment. And so I started learning these songs. And, as time...
What was the first song you learned of his?
Let's see. Probably all the Purple Rain stuff.
Oh, okay.
All the Purple Rain stuff. I would sit, my little boombox. My mother had a upright piano, and I would sit it up where you put the music at. And I would sit it there and I would play along with it. Now, there's an interesting story about me and my little tape deck. So, and my tape decks over the years. So, for some strange reason, my tape decks would play stuff a half a step higher. I don't know why. I have no idea. And so I know all these songs, but by the time I got to being in Prince's band, a lot of these songs, I knew them in the wrong key. But thank God I can play in every key. Yeah. But when he would ask me, what key is so-and-so and so-and-so in? And I'd be like, oh, it's this key. He's like, no, it ain't. I was like, yeah, it is. It's in C. He's like, no, it ain't. And he's like, Cassandra, Cassandra, how are you going to tell me my own song is in that key? I wrote it. I'm like, sir, I know you wrote it, but it's in C. And he's like, no, it's in B. And so luckily we have YouTube now. So I would go to YouTube and I'd be like, oh, he's right.
Wow.
It's in B. So the whole Around the World in a Day, I was listening to it in a totally different key.
Wow.
Parade, different key.
Oh my gosh.
What was the other one? Sign of the Times, different key. So, yeah.
Because they were all on cassette for you.
Right.
Wow.
Mm-hmm. Yep. Yep. And then I finally got some kind of other cassette player more of a pro setup, and and things were being played in the right key after that.
Then it was normal,
right? Right. But
wow.
I became infatuated with his music. I remember in 1986. I developed a very strange habit. Whenever I had a test, I would listen to the Parade record and study. Don't ask me how, don't ask me why, but yeah. So when, Under the Cherry Moon came out, I was just totally, yeah. That Parade is my favorite. Yeah, Parade is my favorite record. That's my favorite.
Yeah, we share that bit for sure.
Okay.
Wow. Oh my God.
Yeah. So I was going to tell you about Erotic City. So I went and bought the 45 to Erotic City, the 12-inch, and it was Prince. Nobody really cared because on the radio station that they played Erotic City, they bleeped out by using a snare sound, the "we can funk it too," and she's saying funk, but because it was so you couldn't tell what she was saying.
It was muted.
They kind of bleeped it out a little bit, and so but on the version that I had, it was the original. So I'm listening to dun, 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 I'm singing, "We can funk it," and my sister came in and she was like, "We can what?" I said, "Funk." She's like, "That's not what he said. I'm telling." And she was like, "Don't let me." Right. She ratted me out. So they took that one away from me. They did take that one away from me.
They took your 12-inch?
They took my 12-inch away from me. That's the one with that was, I think, was that Let's Go Crazy? The regular side to that, and I didn't really listen to that because that was on the Purple Rain soundtrack. So, so that wasn't.
How come you didn't like that?
What? Let's Go Crazy?
Yeah.
It wasn't that I didn't like it. I was just over inundated with it. And I get like that now. Like, it just, I don't like what everybody likes. I don't like and
you don't gravitate.
Right. And it wasn't that I didn't like it. I love the song. I still like the song. I enjoy playing the song. It's just that I didn't want to hear it because I knew everybody else was listening to that. It was a hit.
Gotcha.
You know what I'm saying? So I listen to the other stuff.
Yeah.
And I've always been that way. When everybody goes that way, I go that way. So
I'm over here. Y'all over there.
Yeah, y'all can stay over there. I'm gonna be over here. Me and my onesome and my little world, and and I even bought 17 Days. I had that one too. Did I buy? Oh, I bought Love or Money. I bought that. That was the B-side to Girls and Boys, I believe. And then I also had Alexa de Paris. I still have that. I have that sitting over there somewhere. I just was buying stuff. I bought The Family. I bought Vanity 6. I bought Apollonia 6. And even though those records didn't do outside of, Nasty Girl and Sex Shooter, nobody really cared about those records. I did. Those were some good songs. And
they were good songs.
They were really good songs. And I even bought Vanity's Wild Animal record. Yeah, I bought that one, and I bought some other B-side to something, some other Prince protege record. It might have been Jesse Johnson, I believe.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. I had the time Ice Cream Castles. I had that.
Yeah.
So I just wanted to know.
You were all in that purple world.
I wanted to know who this cat was and what was his thing was. And I figured it out. There were things that were on all those records that let you know that he had a hand in it. And musically he had a formula. He really did. And, the whole funk thing, of course, back then I didn't realize what it was called. Well, I kind of learned that early because you had groups like Roger Troutman and Zapp.
Yeah.
They
Right.
were not R&B. They were funk. You know what I'm saying?
Yep.
So when you think about, and then you had like Average White Band and groups like that were playing funk music that was mistakenly being categorized as R&B.
Of course. Yeah,
So
just lump it all together.
yeah, they lumped it all together, and and then I became a Roger Troutman fan, and and it was just, all of anybody that Prince said he liked, that's who I got into. When I heard that, James Brown was a big influence, and Jimi Hendrix, I got into them,
Right.
and so he introduced me to a lot of different artists that I probably wouldn't have gotten into, like Miles Davis. I got into Miles Davis probably when I was in junior high, and the Tutu record came out.
Okay.
And then I went backwards from there because, Miles Davis is a legend. So, I'm like, oh, all right, this jazz stuff. And, you listen to, So What, and Someday My Prince Will Come. And later on, those songs were actually songs that I would sing in college.
Wow.
So, it was Prince.
So did you study when you went to college? Were you a music major in college?
I was. So let's talk about that. So as I got older, we moved, and parents got divorced, and we moved from New York to Philly, to Charlotte, to Orlando, Florida.
Okay. Wow.
Right. They didn't know.
What was the time span of that?
Oh, child. Let's see. It was a lot. So we left New York in 85, and we moved to Philly. I stayed in Philly from 85 to 87, and then moved to Charlotte for all of 87, and then in 88 moved to Orlando. Parents didn't know what to do. They felt guilty because my sisters had them in the household when they graduated from high school. So they felt bad, and they couldn't figure it out. They were making my life a living hell, but they couldn't figure it out. They just, it's not her fault. We need to stay together for her. And I'm just like, no, y'all don't, because y'all are making me miserable.
You're making me crazy.
Yeah, you're making me crazy. Like, and they think I won't say I was quiet, but I was one of those people. I was really intuitive. And so stuff that they were trying to keep away from me, I already knew.
You knew.
It's like, okay, y'all, come on. Yeah, Dad, I know you cheated. Yeah, I know. And there were so many things that were going on. It's just like, all right, y'all, come on, get it together. So once I graduated from high school, I decided to move to LA. I had an uncle that lived out there.
Oh.
And he told me, before graduation, he was like, if you really want to play and you want to play on a professional circuit, you need to move here. And I'm like, okay. So I did. And I actually had a guy that I was seeing that also was intending to move too. And so we ended up moving together. And that didn't last very long. That lasted a couple of months, and he was gone. But my uncle lived there, and he was involved in the broadcasting side of the industry. And so I didn't know anybody. I started playing for a church, one of those churches that, excuse me, that had a bit of a reputation, but was kind of like I hate to call it this, but they were kind of a has-been situation. They were popular. But what saved them was they had a choir director. And I won't say he saved them, but what I'll say is what he kept them on the map was he had the choir director owned a robe shop that was on Crenshaw. And he made everybody's robes. And so all the choirs that were in LA, all their robes were made by Robert Henry, the late great Robert Henry. And he had his robe shop on Crenshaw. But I went to his church. So he had a choir called the Voices of Watts. That was kind of an extension of his his church choir.
Okay.
The church choir were all members of the Voices of Watts, but the Voices of Watts was like the community choir sector of it.
Right. Okay.
And so Robert would have us go all around LA and sing at these different churches. And so people would be like, who's this light-skinned chick? Who's this chick playing? Who is she? And so, you know, and I was different, you know, I have to say that moving to a different place where people are born, raised, and probably gonna die, and you come in, the newcomer, that's very, very, you have to be very brave to do that.
Yeah.
Because some people don't like new people, especially church people.
Yeah.
They don't like.
They don't like the new one.
No.
It's like, you got to prove yourself.
Right. You gotta, they have a whole initiation ready for you.
Yeah.
And all of that. So I ended up, you know, the church is in Watts. I mean, we're talking deep down South Central, you know what I'm saying? Like, it's not the greatest neighborhood. So, and I lived in Hollywood.
Okay.
So it was two totally different sides of the city. And so I played there for a number of years and kind of got some exposure. Thank God for Robert, because he really believed in me and he liked how I played. And, you know, I did my first live recording with them. That was my first time working with my friend Andrew Goucher. He produced the record. That was how I met Andrew. And he was actually going to replace all of us except for the organist, because the organist was someone that he played with already. So, you know, so he was like, yeah, I might, you know, I'm just going to have, you know, this person and this person and this person, you know, play on the record. So, you know, and then Robert was like, give her a chance. Yeah. You know, give her a chance. She can do it. Give her a chance. So it was me and the organist were the only two people.
Only two. Wow.
That out of the church band that got to play on the album. And and it was an experience. I'll never forget it. And, you know, I really, really, you know, to this day, I always pay homage to Robert, because he gave a lot of people, a lot of singers and musicians their shot. Yeah. And, you know, and I'm a girl. You know, that's the other thing. This is a guy's sport.
That's the other thing, isn't it? Especially in the churches too, because they were the ones that were always playing on the organ, and they were like the main pianist and all of that. Yep. Yeah, so, definitely.
Yep. So you know, it was a proving myself situation all the time. So I ended up leaving Tree of Life in 94 or 95, I think. And I started playing for another church in Pomona, which was even more further south. That was like in San Bernardino, close to San Bernardino County, I believe. And I was playing at I was playing for no, let me go back. So the guy that I dated was Seventh-day Adventist.
Oh,
right.
Okay.
And so we started going to, you know, we would go to his church on Saturday and go to my church on Friday. And so the Seventh-day Adventist church was, at that time, they were like the Seventh-day Adventist Baptist Kojic church, because they could really, really sing. It was Ephesus Seventh-day Adventist Church on West.
Yes, they can sing.
Oh,
like their harmonies are really, really tight. I grew up in a Adventist school.
Oh,
I went to Adventist school all my life.
Gotcha.
So I know that whole thing. And,
you know, Take Six comes out of there. Yeah. So this particular church affiliated with, I was singing with them first, and I would play occasionally, you know, because they had their musicians. But this particular night, I was at one of the largest churches in LA, which is West Angeles, which later on I ended up playing at. I ended up being on staff there. But I was there that night with this Adventist church. And Daryl Coley happened to be there. And Daryl, at that time, Daryl was and still is the voice. You know what I'm saying?
Mm-hmm.
He just was that cat. And so actually I had seen Daryl before, and I was a big Daryl Coley fan. Because I was a big Hawkins fan. He comes from the Hawkins family. He grew up he came up in Oakland, was singing background for Sylvester and for Tremaine and Walter and them. Anyway,
yeah.
So, but before that, and I know I'm hopping around because a lot of this stuff I don't remember until I talk about it.
Sure.
So prior to that, I was playing for the Quaker Oats choir competition. Quaker Oats put on a choir competition in LA, and I was playing, yes, and I was playing for Village Baptist Church. I'll never forget it. And it was me and a good friend of mine named Tony Jones. We were playing a song, and Daryl was sitting behind me, and I played this like passage of chords, and he goes, "Play, girl." And I looked, I'm like, "Oh, okay." So that was my first introduction to Daryl. So that particular night at West Angeles, we sang, and then he got up and sang. He was in concert. So they had like a bunch of different choirs open up, and then Daryl was to close it out. And I happened to be sitting there. I don't know how I ended up playing, but it was me and somebody else and somebody else and somebody else. And we just ended up playing some song that we just kind of knew already. And and that was that. So after the concert was over, I went to the vestibule to go like shake his hand or something. And he's signing autographs. And he's signing this lady's autograph, and he sees me and he goes, "You know you my player, girl. You know you my player. Come here." I said, "Okay." So I walked over and he was like, "Girl, I need to talk." He was like, "First of all, I love your playing." I'm like, "Oh my gosh, thank you." I was like, "And I love your singing." And so we ended up just having small talk, and he was like, "I would love to get your number. I want to give your number to my manager, my wife, because I do a tour in Japan, and I would love for you to accompany me." And I'm like, "Oh, really?" And so I gave him my card, and I got that call, and I went to Japan in December of that year, and that was my first tour.
Wow.
And that was...
You starting with Coley out the gate. That's awesome.
Yeah. And so, and here's the thing, like, I had been toiling with like which direction to go. And I'm just kind of like, okay, I'm at this point, it's 95. I moved to LA in 91. So I had been there for about 3-4 years. I wasn't working a 9 to 5. I tried that for 1 week and it didn't work. And I said it that day when I got that $150 check from that temp agency for being someone's administrative assistant for 8 hours, for 5 days, for 40 hours. And I'm just like, okay, this ain't happening. I'm going to make a living playing music. And I did just that. And I just began to get out there and playing for different choirs and playing for different people and just doing the thing, doing the grind. And, and that's kind of what happened. And then the guy that was the musical director for Daryl, for the tour, Daryl Crooks, late great Daryl Crooks, rest in peace, Daryl. That's my cat. We lost him last year. We were having conversations when we were in Japan, and I was like, "Daryl, get me on some of this stuff that you're doing." He was like, "Well, it ain't gonna be all gospel, I was like, "Yeah, I know that." And at that time there were people making promises to me that they were going to put me on certain gigs and never did. And it was, and that was mainly on the gospel side. And they were like, "Yeah, I'm gonna have you do this, and we're gonna do that," and blah, 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 blah. And it never happened. So, Daryl was like, I'm going to hook you up. We're going to get you in there.
Mm-hmm.
So one day, I was at Magic Mountain with my church. And it was during the summer. I had on shorts and some like combat boots or something.
Mm-hmm.
And so I go to the ATM to get money to get in the park, right? On my way to going to, to pay my entrance in the park, I get a call on my cell phone from Daryl. And Daryl Crooks, the guitar player, says, "Hey, what you doing?" I said, "I'm at Magic Mountain." He's like, "Oh, okay, you're not far." I was like, "I'm not far from what?" He's like, "Come to the, I'm going to give you an address. Come to the studio in Reseda." I was like, "Now?" He's like, "Yeah." He's like, "You told me to get you on some stuff. I'm getting you on some stuff." I said, "But I'm at Magic Mountain with my church." He was like, "Look, you want to make money or you want to spend money?" I said, "I want to make money." He's like, "All right, well, get your butt here then." So I called a cab. I ended up going to Can-Am Studios. And I was working for Death Row Records. I didn't realize it. I didn't realize it until I had to fill out my invoice. And I became a regular around there. So I did a number of albums. I did a number of records with Death Row, with Tupac and Snoop and Christopher Williams, and even this.
What was that like?
It was fun. It was fun. It wasn't what people thought because we were musicians. We weren't gangsters. So, you had to get patted down when especially when you were new. You had to get patted down or whatever. But then by the, like the third week, they knew who I was, so they didn't have to pat me down no more. So, I was doing stuff for MC Hammer. He was signed to Death Row. That was when he was trying to do gangster rap. And I did some things with Mickey Howard and Kevin Lewis, who was Ramsey Lewis's son, I believe, or nephew, was one of the producers. And I was working underneath him. And then what ended up happening is different producers would request us. So I was getting calls in the middle of the night. I'd be knocked out sleep. "Can you come to the studio? Michelle A needs you to do a track." I'm like, "Sure." And it was, it was money. So I enjoyed it. And I learned a lot. I learned a lot from doing those sessions. And then I got a gig after that. I was still doing, basically I did Death Row until Tupac passed.
Oh, okay.
That was the end of that. And so, yeah, because it just got a little tumultuous for me. And I'm just like, they're trying to figure out who did it and, and all of that. And I was like, let me take myself out of that.
After this environment.
So after that, I did a rockabilly artist named Michelle Shocked. I did her tour. And then after that, I did Shantae Moore. And then by this time, I was kind of in the thick of things. I did 98 Degrees. That was my first arena tour. And that was...
What was that like?
Interesting, because you got mothers and daughters swooning over the same people.
Yeah.
Everybody loved them, Nick Lachey and all
like that environment coming from, like Death Row Records to like that, like wasn't that sort of like a big culture?
Oh yeah. But that was when it started to get real, when it became, professional, when I started doing that stuff.
We are out of time for part 1, but please join us for part 2 and hear who Cassandra has worked with.